y'all. I was a high school teacher, so I use old school crowd control techniques. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up. Yeah, okay, great, because we've got a sound guy in the back. Great. So, hello, I'm Lauren, I'm Jim's daughter. First of all, thank you for being here. I've always wondered what this building was, and now we all get to find out, so I'm really happy about it. To start, I'll just say, give a confession. My father gave us essentially no direction for anything he wanted for a celebration of life, other than he did not want a, quote, big fancy funeral. So here we are at Jotee's, which I think qualifies not as a big fancy funeral, but as a place that he loved so much. You know, my dad did not like the spotlight. He was a very humble man, and I think as a result, those of us who loved him, we sometimes didn't know a lot of things about him, because he would never toot his own horn, he would never celebrate himself. And so my hope, and our family's hope today, is that we get to know him a little bit better, and that you hopefully will get to know him a little bit better as we all share memories of him. To that end, a few things before we get into all the speeches. You've probably seen there is a program at the back. My dad loved puzzles, so I made a crossword puzzle all about him. And I promise that again, high school teacher, if you pay attention, you'll know a lot of the answers. Also there's a little basket if you want to write down any memories of him. There's a basket you can throw a card in. We also have a voicemail that will be up for like the next year. So the code is on the program. It's also listed back there. So if you have a story about Dad, anything you want to share about him, no matter what it is, you can leave a voicemail. So again, sorry, I'm a teacher. If you like to write, you can write. If you like to talk, you can talk. And you can also just talk to our faces as well. So again, thank you for being here. As far as the tone of the thing goes, this is a celebration of life. And as I said, my dad hated the spotlight, right? He would never toot his own horn. So my sincere hope is that we can make this a celebration that he would have hated. Because the irony is, of course, that he had to not be here to stop us in order for us to brag on him, say how much we loved him, and tell all sorts of weird and wonderful, wild stories about him. So, with that all being said, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Jim's nephew and my cousin, Will Stripling.
I feel like I'm getting called to the front of the class.
That's right, I'm calling you, Will.
I feel like I'm doing my oral report. I have a tendency to be able to project my voice pretty well. Am I coming across too loud in the back for anybody?
What?
Thank you, appreciate it. I said, sir. So, in this family tree, my name is Will Stripling. My father is Bill, who was Jim's brother. And for some of you that have come up to me today and kind of helped me reintroduce myself to the family tree, thank you. In preparation for this, I thought a lot about it when Lauren and Mahala asked for the honor, and Whitney asked for the honor to do this, about Jim. And so I'm going to kind of share some thoughts today, not only from myself and my bride Denise and my family, but also from my father and his bride Nancy, from my sister Kristen. Our mother here, Lindy, is with us as well. And so we just want to kind of take Lauren's advice and just kind of have a little fun with this. And so in kind of preparing, thinking back over memories, and then talking with Dad, a common theme came up about Jim. And the word kept coming to mind was caretaker. And I'll explain why. When we were growing up, like for Kristen and myself, Uncle Jim was cool. I mean, he played anything that had strings on it, and he always had these cool metal picks on his fingers. So he was way ahead of Marvel before Marvel kind of came back out with all that fun stuff. And then when Dad and Jim sometimes would play together and then sing together, that was like really cool. Now, it wasn't like Lester and Earl good, but it was pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. You know, in talking with Kristen and others, you know, we look back on fun family memories of whether it's gatherings, Nantucket, the lodge, Christmas at Granny and Granddad's. And then as we got older, and I never really lived in the same city or state as much of our family tree has for the last 30 years. But we began to have these Christmas family dinners. And you two know what I'm talking about. Where Dad and Jim and Nancy and the families would get together for dinner. And this was kind of a big thing at my house, because it kind of required a little study in advance. So picture this table. You've got a bunch of doctorates and wonderful, smart, blessed people. And holiday conversation was light and easy, you know, like English literature, British film, and Mozart's life, and what happened to Theodore Roosevelt's grandnephew, and Dad, have you read this book? And of course Jim said, yes, I have. So I would always pray around dinner time that by the time we got to dessert, I at least had a B- for my contributions. And I would just walk out of these dinners like, wow, that was awesome. But what it was incredible. It was amazing. It was a connection of people just talking about their common things and things that they enjoyed. And Jim would just kind of sit back, and his girls would be shining, and his family would be represented. And I could just think to myself, he's just going, I did good. This is good. This is really good. And so that was really, really neat. And we learned a lot. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit. We were talking a little bit about sports with Dad today. You know, TCU games were big, Ranger games were huge, Cowboy games were big. You know, and even Anna Bland, Jim and Bill's dad, our granny, taught us at a young age that it was okay to go to bed with a little earbud in your ear while listening to the Rangers play-by-play on her little transistor radio, right? So she was really ahead of her time. And so as a result of that, I think, I can't prove this, but I think my Uncle Jim and myself may have inherited that quality to maybe just at times put a very discreet, unplanned little earplug in your ear, just in the unlikely event a sporting event might be taking place over some other type of gathering. So I can't confirm or deny that he or I ever looked like the Secret Service at any time during our life. And I won't ask my bride to comment on that at the top of the Hancock Tower for Thanksgiving with my mother and sister listening to the Cowboy game, and I do apologize. It was always kind of fun to see somebody kind of listening in one ear and then kind of chatting and conversing out of the other. And so that's always been a lot of fun. But on a serious note, what really stood out about Jim to me, and especially in these settings, was his admiration for the three of you. And just what you meant to him and his life. He was always completely invested in what you girls were doing, what your families were doing. And I just know, being a father myself, again, just probably sitting at that table going, this is good. This is good. People are happy. People are healthy. This is a great family. And it was just really neat to see. Because he really had quite an engaging respect for his family, but he also had a very quiet respect for you as well. And I would see that as he would just kind of make space for things to happen and for activities to take place. You know, and as I mentioned, even though we lived in different cities, Jim was always a phone call away. And he would answer. Whether I needed, you know, not in the bad way, whether if I needed legal counsel, or if we just needed him, he would make himself available. And he would do that without question. And he was always available. And we were always very grateful for that. And I think because of that, his kindness, his generosity, not only of himself, but of his time, Kristen and I and our families are absolutely certain that the Heavenly Bluegrass Ensemble today probably sounds better than it ever has. In talking with Dad, there's a few things I want to share from my father. And I want to make sure I get these right. So Dad was 4 years older than Jim. And they lived kind of separate but parallel lives. Right? That makes sense, and I think you guys understand that. And like when Dad was born on was Whidbey Island, you know, the Puget Sound. They came back to Fort Worth. Then little brother was born when Dad came back. But Dad also remembers Jim being the role of caretaker, and kind of almost how their roles might have reversed, and how Jim just kind of took that role of just caring for others, caring for the family, and being there when people needed him. Dad shared a great story that, you know, he would go down when Jim was playing in his bluegrass band. I want to make sure I get this bar right, down on White Settlement called Tootsie. I guess he'd come down and meet you, Mahala, right? And kind of sit and watch the guys play and watch them play their bluegrass. And then Dad also told a great story about Jim, I guess, was coming out of the Hollywood Theater down on 7th Street, probably coming back, you know, from being overseas in Vietnam. And I guess he's walking down the sidewalk and he hears, "Hey, Captain, Captain." And Jim kind of turns around, and there's this gentleman soldier there on the street. And he says, Captain, and then Jim reunited and recognized who he was. And he said, Captain, I just want to thank you. He said, I know I was guilty and I know I did bad stuff, but you did everything you could for me, and I will never forget that. And I'm so grateful. And then Dad also shared that Jim made it a preference and a real focus to defend soldiers and those in need versus prosecuting. And again, that's where that word caretaker kept coming back to me, of just kind of putting your arm around others and coming alongside folks and really looking after each other. So I thought that was really neat. And in closing, I think my father put it best. Make sure I get this right, Dad. Because of kind of the reverse roles that Dad and Jim shared, he said, if Coppola recast The Godfather, I would be Fredo and Jim would be my Michael Corleone.
Thank you so much, Will. I have now learned that my father apparently defended guilty criminals. So there we go.
That's what all lawyers do.
Yeah, exactly, right? Going on the family theme, next up we have my father's cousin, George Thompson.
Thank you, Lauren. Mahala asked me to talk just a little bit about the family history and as it relates to Nantucket. And Nantucket was a special place for all of us. Jim and Mahala were married there. I remember spending a lot of time at the Stripling house over on Cliff Road when I was growing up. And I remember Jim and Bill's dad, who I called Uncle Bill, taking us out to Great Point at dawn in the old green Jeep to go fishing, which was a wonderful experience. And people ask from time to time, how did these families from Fort Worth end up going to Nantucket every summer? What caused that? And the history on that goes back, I can't believe it's 120 years, but it goes back 120 years to when George and Anna Bland Thompson sent their son, George Jr., to prep school at the Andover Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, where Jim also went. And while he was there at a school dance, he met Beatrice Lewis. And they started spending time together. And the Lewises lived in Andover. They've been a long time Andover residences, and they had been going to Nantucket for generations every summer to get out of the Boston heat. And they eventually started taking George Jr. with them down there. And then while they were there, one summer, they had a train, the Nantucket Central Railroad, that ran from downtown to the village of Wisconsin on the eastern shore. And it would stop midway through the trip, and there was a field there, and passengers would get out. And B and George took that train over to Wisconsin, and they got out, and George picked wildflowers from the field and proposed to be out there in the field on the way to Wisconsin. And as soon as he graduated from Yale, they got married. And but they kept coming back to Nantucket every summer. And they brought their 5 children with them every summer. And the children, when they got older and had children, started bringing their children. And that's how they all ended up in Nantucket. And I will miss Jim when I get up there, and I will raise a glass to him on the beach. That's it.
Thank you so much, George. I forgot my name. All right, so, after those early years in Nantucket, y'all probably know my dad spent his college years at Yale and was very, very, very close to some of his college roommates who could not be here, but who sent some sentiments, and I would like to read those to you now. So first from Jeff McGrath. Jim was always so robust, so confident, so original. We met when we were kids.
I was 17, he was an Andover graduate, so bright and well educated, and he had a whole bluegrass persona that he conferred on us. Flatten Scruggs, Doc Watson, the new Lost City Ramblers, plus all the musical instruments. Oh my God, I never learned where he got infected with all that, but it obviously stayed with him his whole life. And what a life. He met you, referring to my mom, his love, your daughter, his work. Jim personified Yale to me in so many ways. His intelligence, his determination to become a lawyer even then, his friendship. We roomed together for 3 years. We went to Bermuda together. We drove to many girls' school mixers together. He had that Texas thing about driving. One time, we had both returned to Yale with a week left on spring vacation, and we made up James Bond stories. He had a good writing sense. And then this is from Ridge White, another Yale roommate. You three and so many others of us have lost a dear man. From freshman year in Wright Hall through senior year when we were roommates in Branford to the present, Jim was a noteworthy figure in my life. There are many reasons for my admiration and affection for him, and I will touch on a few. This tall, lean Texan stood out right away for his obvious talents. A quick wit, a sense of humor that combined cleverness with a good sense of, oh my gosh, my pages are off. It printed on the back. A good sense. What did Dad have a good sense of? Oh, boundaries. A good sense of boundaries, a gentle manner that betrayed sound values and a proper upbringing, and excellent abilities on the banjo and guitar. It turned out, before long, that he was sharp as a card player. Hearts, usually, and won more than his fair share of games. In freshman year, he wrote a very humorous piece about a number of the characters in our entryway, highlighting the more outrageous and colorful members. The title of this screenplay, many were glad that it never made it to the screen, I think was, quote, 846, Jim's room number. But in it, Jim played a minor straight role. The color came from the carefully selected cast to whom Jim gave their true voices, perhaps somewhat exaggerated. This playlet was a tour de force and exhibited his very capable creative ability. What became clear after a while was that he was a whiz at almost all academic challenges. He had a mind very capable of grasping subtleties, and thus was a vigorous debater. He was also blessed with a superb memory, especially for trivia, as you, but all, especially Lauren, knows. The result is that he was very interesting to listen to. He knew so much and could make clear sense of so many subjects. Bluegrass. Geez, did he own all the records? In senior year, when we were roommates, his vast collection was set up in a windowsill overlooking Branford's beautiful courtyard, and it was perilously close to an old radiator. What I never confessed to him was that there were several times I was tempted to move his collection on top of the radiator. Flattened Scruggs can only be heard so many times before you want to say, enough. But just before my temptation overwhelmed me, the record came to an end and it was time for lunch at the library or a game of pool or a trip to the buttery. It was different from listening to him play, however. He was very talented, and we marveled at how easily the music came from those long fingers. When he put down the banjo and took up the guitar, the more dulcet tones made for easier listening. Banjos make you listen. Guitars ask you to. I have had I know Ridge is a really good writer. I have had the most memorable, warm experiences as a friend of Jim. I remember thanking him for many things, but he was always modest about, see, okay, this is my pages. Y'all, I had to print this.
Lauren,
thank you. I had to print the program on double-sided, and so now it's all double-sided, and I don't know where to go. Where is it? It's praise about my dad. So this is him intervening from the beyond so that I can't brag. Okay, do. Yeah. Do. He was always modest about, what was he modest about? Everything. Oh, accepting praise or gratitude. Here we go again. I know this, that he was deeply fortunate to have you three in his life, that he lived fully, that he was generous with his gifts, and that as a result, we all miss him dearly. Sadness, yes, grief, is the price we pay for having loved. Thank you to Rich for that.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Rich, we love you. So, to talk about Dad's work life now, I would first like to welcome Chuck Milliken from Denver. Oh, you're going to be together? Great. Chuck Milliken and Janet Hahn. Thank you. Come on up. Thank you. In case you're wondering, I'm Janet.
I'm Chuck.
So, we're law partners at Jim's law firm, which was at first Godfrey Decker and a string of names, but now Decker Jones. And he had just celebrated his 50th anniversary at the firm in November. And I was just thinking about that, Chuck. You and I have been there, how long have you been at the firm?
I've been there 42 years.
42, and so I've been there, Tuesday it'll be 40. So we've known Jim for more than half our lives, or twice.
A long, long time. Right?
More than half our lives. So what a joy and a privilege, right?
It was. It is a privilege to.
Come closer to the mic.
It is a privilege to have known Jim and worked with Jim over the years. I was telling Janet yesterday, that Jim was such a valuable resource. I can't tell you how many times that I sat at my desk and I said to myself, I have this tax problem, and I could spend 5 hours researching it. And I would feel reasonably comfortable that I came up with the right answer, but might be a little uncertain. Or I could go to Jim's office, spend 15 minutes, and he would tell me the right answer without a doubt. And I could leave his office knowing that I saved 5 hours and I got the right answer.
And we do that together.
Yeah,
But we were careful. You have to be cautious to go into Jim's office. Because if you went at the wrong moment, the reaction might be,
well, if his back was to you and you said, hey Jim, he would hit the roof. He would jump out of his chair.
so you looked at his computer screen. Was there a bluegrass YouTube on the screen? Was there some sort of game? He might be just exercising his mind for a little while. And so when we knew it was safe to go in, we always would walk in and say, oh, wise one. We're looking for the right answer, we know where to go. And he goes, that is assuming facts, not in evidence. But we always walked out with the right answer, right?
Jim did not suffer fools. And if you went into his office, you had better have a well thought out question. Because if it was not a well thought out question, or maybe a stupid question, if you asked Jim, you would get the Stripling look.
You've seen it.
I know all of you have seen it, but it goes like this. Head down, over to the side a little bit,
Glasses
looking
down.
at you above the glasses, like you are wasting my time.
And that's when you would quickly traverse and go into ask some question about baseball or the World Cup.
That's
What's
true.
some of the sports
It was-
things you remember?
It was always better to start your conversation with Jim was something that he'd be interested in, and then transition to the question you really wanted to ask. You really wanted to ask, and you can, you know, I was blessed to office next to Jim for 24 years, and you know, Jim can be loud at times. He can be loud when he's on the phone all the time, or over the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years when he was really into soccer. If the World Cup was going on and he would be sitting there watching it on his computer and somebody scored a goal or somebody almost scored a goal, oh!
Everybody would jump.
You would wonder what in the world just happened, but it was just Jim watching the World Cup.
Or when the Rangers were making their first run at the World Series in 2010, 2011, he'd be on his computer on an afternoon game, I'd be on mine down the hall. And if I walked out of my office and I heard, "Oh no!" I just run back. And when we didn't do well, the next day it would be, "Your Rangers stink." And then there was the Pete Rose thing.
Yeah, you know, Jim didn't like Pete Rose very much. Jim really didn't like Pete Rose because Pete Rose was a cheater, right? I mean, Pete Rose gambled on his own team when he was managing the Reds. And of course, as most of you may know, the MLB commissioner reinstated Pete Rose this week. It's a good thing Jim's dead because I'm not sure what his reaction would have been to that, but it would have been a very unfavorable reaction.
So, I like this story, Chuck. I asked you, what was your first impression of Jim when you came to the firm? And he's got a great story.
So this would have been right 42 years ago, and I was a young lawyer, and Jim was probably been there 8 years or 9 years, and I went into his office, hopefully with a well-prepared question. I went into his office with a question, and he said, well, the answer is the case of Smith versus Jones. And I'm like, oh, okay, well that's great. And he hops up and he heads down the hallway toward the library, which libraries back then were expansive, 5,000 square feet, all these rows of stacks of books and shelves. And so I follow him down the hall to the library. Well, Jim goes in, turns left again, goes to this stack, goes about halfway down, goes 5 shelves up, about 2/3 down that shelf. He grabs a book, flips to page 478, and goes, "Here's the case of Smith and Jones." Wow. And I met a lot of smart people in law school, but at that point I was like, dang, I never met anybody like this one.
He knew a lot of trivia too. I mean, he's armed with knowledge and music.
Yeah, you know, Jim loved many things. Jim loved his family. Jim loved the Rangers. Jim loved old movies, old music, books. As all of you know, he was a wealth of knowledge and a true Renaissance man in so many ways.
Yes, he knew a lot about everything. In fact, Tanya, our firm administrator, she can attest to this. For United Way, we raise money every year. And one time we had a game called Stump the Stripling. and you pledged money toward how many questions he got correct. And I think it was what Tanya was at 27 he got right out of 30. It was ridiculous. We couldn't stump him. It was unstumpable. But I'll tell you something you may not, maybe I'm the only one that knows this, maybe you know this, but so he and I had an interesting connection because he knows a lot about women's shoes. Did you know that? So I'm wearing the high heels and I'm doing it for his benefit today because he used to always, he'd look at my feet and just shake his head while I wear those heels. And one day he walked by my office and he said, He had that look, you know. I saw those shoes with the red soles and they were $500. And I went, but they were on sale? I got the look. But he would, you know, he'd go on trips and I'd get an email, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but there'd be in my inbox, there'd be a picture of a store, Manolo Blahnik. He says, I went by this store today, and I thought about you. So I think it might be New York City. I'm not sure, but that meant so much to me. But and he even sent me an article one time that said, let's see, the title was, "Does buying a lot of shoes make you a better person?" And the subtitle was, "Quite possibly." So anyway, we had that connection, but. So, and it's not just us that experienced all this. A lot of his firm members, our staff and partners are here today, and everybody really has their own experience with him. He was just larger than life. And Brian Yost, one of his partners, couldn't be here today. He's out of town. But I wanted to share this last email that they shared together, because Jim had just announced his retirement. And Brian said, I'll see if I can see this. "I'll miss our stream of consciousness discussions that might meander from the Rolling Stones to Sisyphus, Boulder to Denver, the Big Unit to the Big Easy, the Saints to Roger Moore, Roger Hornsby to Vita Blue, Bluegrass to Christmas carols, Candy Canes to the Cane Mutiny, Citizen Kane, Carol Kane, and on to Inigo Montoya. What a delightful way to spend 30 minutes of each day." And Jim replied, and you'll love this, because this goes along with what you said earlier. Jim said, "Thanks, Brian. That means a lot. And thanks for not mentioning Pete Rose in the penultimate paragraph." Thank you for letting us be here and sharing our wonderful memories.
That was so wonderful, because everything you say rings absolutely true, but like Dad, like he just didn't talk about work that much. And so it's great to know that he was in fact the same at work. And I absolutely, as his daughter, let me tell you, I know the look that you're talking about. So now I would like to move on to some friends of Dad's. You know, as everybody knows, he loved bluegrass and played the banjo, the guitar, the mandolin. Here are just a few photos of that, and I would love to pass the microphone over to Nikki Hadley to share some reflections.
I've learned a lot here that I didn't know before. I'm really happy to be able to share some very special memories about Jim and my family. We had a special bond. I first met Jim back in the early 1970s, and a couple of these pictures up here, left and right, are pictures that I took. He and my husband, John, were very good friends, and they were brought together by their love of bluegrass music. They had a little band of pickers that met regularly together for years and years and played their hearts out, shared jokes, beers, and I was a little fly on the wall over here. I remember early on, they decided to enter a contest at Seminary South. Do you remember Seminary South? And they were, with trepidation, they entered, and they had to give themselves a name, so they called themselves, I think it was Fall Creek, I believe. So the picture way over there on the left, that's a picture from that event. Just imagine Seminary South, hot. And they were up there John Stewart, John Hatley, and Jim Stripling. And they were probably a little out of their league, you know, and they knew it, but they just played their hearts out. And then afterwards, we looked at this picture, and you can notice maybe that it was hot, so Jim had cut his jeans off, you know. One leg was down here, and the other was up here. And he, you know, he didn't have the greatest fashion sense that we could tell. And we'd been told that really he hadn't bought any new wardrobe since college. I don't know if that was true or not. But the guys teased him a lot for that. About that time, around then, Mahala and Jim met. I don't remember exactly when. But when we knew that they were an item for sure, we had gone to the Kerrville Bluegrass Festival. That was something that John did regularly, and in the early years I would go to. Again, I'm the fly on the wall over here. But they met, and as far as I know, they were just thick as thieves from then on. Many Tuesday nights after that, the guys would gather with their friends and they would play their hearts out at our house. It'd be Jim Stripling, John Hatley, Butch Smith were constants in the group, but also John Stewart, Russell Vowell, Charlie Reynolds, Rollo, many others came and went during those years. Jimmy was the lead. He mostly played the banjo and sometimes the guitar, and he was great. I'm sorry, he was great at all of them. He kept that breakneck tempo going. And the music would weave in and out as each guy took his turn playing his little lead with the little lick he'd been practicing that week. And it was fabulous. And again, I was sitting over here, the little fly on the wall. And during those times, my children were little, infants growing up through those years. You know how you have to tiptoe around your house and be very quiet so you don't wake your kids up? That music was just rocking the house. And the kids never woke up. They slept right through it. It was never a problem. It was lovely. Mahala asked if I could remember the names of some of the songs the guys played. They played thousands of songs. But I went searching through John's songbooks that he kept. He had a little trouble in the end there remembering the words, so he would print out all these different songs. And I came across a song that he'd been working on. I don't know the tune, and you're going to be really lucky because I won't have to sing it to you. Anybody want to hear that? This is the words. Tuesday night at my house, 1975. My voice is kind of raspy and my tempo seems to sway. He didn't have the words that Jim had, but you know. Till Jimmy pulled out his banjo and we all began to play. And we played Soldier's Joy and The Girl I Left Behind, St. Anne's Reel and The Devil's Dream. Oh boy, did we sound fine. We rode the last train from Poor Valley and our long journey home. And 8 more miles to Louisville, and we'll never want to roam. Every Tuesday night we'd gather and pick and wash away our sins. It sounded so good, the walls would shake. We all began to grin. Johnny sang bass, Butch sang tenor. In their dreams, you might say, and the laughter of those evenings is forever tucked away.
Thanks, I'd like to call our penultimate speaker. Yeah, that's
dear friend and our dad's neighbor, Ken Bowers.
Good afternoon. When I was attending the Acme School of Public Speaking and Graduate Studies, one of the things they said never do is get up in front of a group and have something that would distract from yourself. As you'll notice, I came by it honestly. Earlier this week, I was up in Oklahoma fishing with some wounded warriors, and in the evening, as we broke up, I was attacked by a young, inexperienced vampire. I say inexperienced because you see he missed and only got one fang in, so we're when Jim and Mahala moved in next door, we found out he's a lawyer. There goes the neighborhood. But then we found out he's a banjo player. Oh, okay, that's better. And he picked 5 strings, I understood. Is that correct?
Correct.
Which reminds me of Norman McLean's story about fishing up in Montana. The father of the story, the river runs through it, said Jesus loved St. Peter best of all because St. Peter was a dry fly fisherman. And I'm sure he felt the same way about 5-string guitar pickers over 4-string. Jim taught classes at TCU with our extended ed OAP program, Silver Frogs. OAP, you didn't get that, did you? Old age pensioners. It's an English term. And Jim taught a class, I guess 2 or 3 classes about bluegrass, and he also attended a lot of the music classes that were there. And he, in addition to the bluegrass and country music, he also knew an inordinate amount of rock and roll, which surprised us all. As a neighbor, Jim was always fun. He enjoyed mowing tremendously. He always put on a really spiffy outfit to do it. And he mowed like a demon. I think he was trying to get it done before he actually realized he was out doing it and didn't want to. He was also very helpful. Like one night we have a cat, still have the bugger. He got out, he's a house cat, he got out and in the evening, and there was another cat in the yard, which we don't know whether he wanted to go make friends or wanted to get him out of the yard. Anyway, he runs that cat out of the yard, through the fence, over into Stripling's yard, and disappears into the bushes. So we finally call him, and he's not coming. Recalcitrant guy. So finally we said, well, we'll leave you out there for a while. And about 9 that night, we were out trying to get him out again. We saw him, but he was inside the fence, so I had to call Jim. He said, 9 o'clock at night, Jim, we need some help. Can you open your gate and let me in to get my cat out? Sure, Of course, the cat, oh, you're after me? He runs home. Sorry, false alarm, Jim. No problem with that. I think the last time I saw Jim, he was coming out of the house and he was taking out something out of the trash. And I was doing one of my infrequent walks around the neighborhood for exercise. They saw him, he had his head down, he was concentrating on something. And so I just started singing take out the papers in the trash, or you won't get no spending cash. Yakety yak. Oh, hi. Oh, hi. Mahala, if you need anything, we're always next door.
All right. Okay, so, I am your commencement speaker this day. Okay, here's the end. I will try to make it short and lively. First of all, to get some business out of the way, on behalf of my mom, Mahala, my sister, Whitney, and myself, I'd like to say thanks for being here. Thanks also to the staff at Josie, to all of our speakers today, and please continue to share memories via voicemail on the program. We set up a voicemail if you want to record it that way. You can write it down on a card and put it in your basket, or just you can talk to us like people used to do face to face. We also want to acknowledge all of the love and condolences we've received and the generous donations to one of Dad's favorite causes, Andover's MS2 program, which helps young scholars learn more about math. Dad loved discrete math and logic, especially like the squishy bits where it goes all wonky and you end up in a self-referential paradox. One of his favorite books, which I am in the process of reading, is called Gödel Escher Bach. And it's all about the idea of the strange loop in math, in art, and in music. It's a concept of a loop where you start and then you go around in life and then you end back up where you started, and only then do you hopefully ascend to a higher plane. I'm hopeful today that upon completion of his journey, Dad has jumped up in the strange loop. There are so many reasons that I am grateful to be Jim's daughter. One is getting to have like a passing understanding of abstract mathematical paradoxes. I'm summarizing it for y'all because I haven't read the book. I'm working on it. Another is getting to hear all of the concretely wonderful things that you've all said. A third is that although my father may have been very shy with accepting public love and praise, he was far from stingy in giving it. I was never unsure of his love, his pride, or his acceptance. When I ended up majoring in English at Yale, I felt like there was like a chorus of boos from skeptics around me. What will you do? Teach? Yeah, I did for 15 years. Major in computer science and become rich. But no boos from my father. He never once gave me any guff about spending his hard-earned money reading books, thinking, or writing. And we all know how he felt about spending his hard-earned money. He didn't like it. As a lawyer and writer, he valued the carefully considered word. Thinking about it now, I imagine he must have thought it was worth it to read, to think critically, to investigate how others had processed their lives over centuries, to try to discover what part of the strange loop of the universe you'd been walking that day. My dad was not a traditionally religious man, but as much as he loved logic and reason, he also loved the illogical human part of the humanities. He knew art, music, and writing are what we turn to in life's biggest transitions, including this final one. And so, to mark this transition and to celebrate my father, I would humbly like to provide him a return on his investment. When my parents got married, my dad's beloved college roommate, Ridge White, who we heard from earlier, wrote them an ode. When I got married, my dad wrote one for me. And so, here is my ode. A version for all of you, but mostly for my dad. There's a toast at the end that I hope we can all say together, and I promise you will know it when you see it. An ode to my father. An ode to my father, this James Lewis Stripling. Be warned, I'm no Shakespeare, Dickinson, or Kipling. As a man, he was devoid of traits most egoic, yet deserves to be lauded in couplets heroic. So I'll just say plainly, it would make me quite glad to deliver this ode in tribute to my dad. So, where to begin? For this man was so humble that in gathering lore, even daughters could stumble. So allow me to use as a source my own mind, where memories of Jim Stripling are easy to find. In my earliest sensing, I would come to no harms, when ensconced safely in my father's strong arms. And as soon as I knew never talk to no strangers, I also knew always root for Texas Rangers. In athletics, my father was also quite fond of bike riding, like a Texas-style Greg LeMond. And sometimes, when lucky, he'd bike round with me on the back of his bike. Why, I felt truly free. And as a chef, Dad would make meals so nutritious that purple bewigged, he'd turn into Sid Vicious. Before getting out cookie cutters of such shapes, you see we had appetite from all the croquet. When springtime came, much to my young heart's delight, he'd get string and some tape and we'd go fly a kite. And when summer was on and I was free from school, nothing ever was as fun as being tossed in the pool. Unless in Nantucket, where bluefish, not salmon, got caught between games versus Granny, backgammon. In the autumn was football, the horned frogs, so great. Deviled eggs were my favorite, he made for tailgate. And then, winter. The skeptic would draw now a pause. I'm pretty sure Dad signed the note from the S clause. And Christmas morning, to my mother's delight, we duet harp and guitar, playing Silent Night. To be his daughter was so special, I'll sob it. He read to me out loud the whole book, The Hobbit. And if I'm an actress, it's due to the choices my father made when he would do all the voices. Years later, he'd come to my plays, and I sorta knew where he was from the light on his camcorder. And as a teen, dinner would be a debate over dyeing my hair blue, whether I could date, or the classic, my first paycheck, the irritation. Dad unconvinced my deductions were unfair taxation. I was under 18. I was like, it's taxation without representation. He was like, no, it's we have representative democracy. It was hard. These mental gymnastics found me soon at Yale. And Dad's pride in this exploit was beyond the pale. Then, diploma in hand, officially now a dork, I'd get visits from Dad when I moved to New York. And though game shows are really my idea of fun, he agreed on Millionaire to be my +1. And when life's twists and turns got me before I was ready, my father was there with a countenance steady. Till last spring, when our bodies each started to weather 2 separate diagnoses of cancer together. To say he fought bravely might be formulaic, but the sentiments fit for a rhyme elegiac. And since I'm the survivor here after his death, I promise to remember till my own last breath what he taught me and made me and gave me and more. He's in my DNA, in my face, in my core. And I'll face what comes fairly, as he'd have me do. Give my life careful thought that it's carefully due. For my father's ethos, though not godly, was clear. To live with curiosity rather than fear. And keep learning and quizzing and reading, and when it's all done in a strange loop, to do it again. I've gone on long enough. So let me, as your host, stop it with all the rhyming and lead us in a toast. So now raise up your Ritas, put your hand on your heart, and lift up all your voices. Now we all in one part will tell him together, whether he is above, somewhere out in the ether, that will always hold love and gratitude, respect, affection for him as we chant in a chorus. We all love you, Jim. Cheers to my dad.
Cheers. Love you, Grandad. I miss you.
Thank you all for being here and enduring my verse. The buffet is open, drinks are flowing. Please do the crossword if you want. And